Hello and welcome to Gardens of Ventura County. I'm your host, Robert Barrett. This is the show that brings you to the most amazing gardens, landscapes, and other places of interest that have to do with planting. Ventura County has a Mediterranean climate. The plants do fabulous, the trees do fabulous, the landscapers do fabulous. And we're at an installation today that is going to stand for years and years. It's the product of the visionary artist and sculptor Paul Lindhard from Arch City. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Echoes from the Past, an interview with Paul Lindhard, right here on Gardens of Ventura County. Thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. Echoes of a Recent Past. Paul Lindhard's artist statement. Echoes of a Recent Past is a site-specific, long-term temporary art installation that repurposes and reinterprets materials that were found and harvested on lots being developed in downtown Ventura. The conceptual thrust of this installation is to imagine an agrarian approach to the usefulness of all the material we discard and of space and history that is no particular destination. The theme for this installation uses historic and familiar forms that infer human habitat. The growing of food and flowers is the natural first step in a reimagined use of the archaeology, arranged to enhance and organize this space for everyone to enjoy. This project is a collaboration between Paul Lindhard of Arch City Studios and the Museum of Ventura County. Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. We are absolutely thrilled and proud to introduce to the show Mr. Paul Lindhard, creator, visionary, director of this wonderful project, Echoes from the Past. Welcome to the program, Paul.
Thanks, Rob. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to express what this project's about.
You're very welcome. Paul Lindhard, ladies and gentlemen, is a fixture in Ventura. He's the the owner of Arch City Studios over on Dubbers Lane, and Arch City Stone Supplies and Studios for Artists. Absolutely fabulous place. Check it out whenever you have the time. But we're here today to talk about Echoes from the Past, this wonderful installation featuring recycled materials. Paul, why don't you take it from here? Tell us all about it.
Well, about a year and a half ago, there was a building called the Strong Steel Building, a block from here, and it was demolished. And it had a lot of beautiful material, including 200,000 bricks that I got, and a bunch of cladding and tin that will last still for hundreds of years. And so I had in my mind how that could be repurposed, and in the back of my mind I wanted to do this project here on this site, which is behind the museum in a lot that was in disuse and had not really been considered for close to 25 years of my tenancy in the city.
It laid fallow for quite a while, nothing but boulders and weeds, absolutely. We're wondering what the museum might decide to do with it. Tell us, how did it come to be that the museum embraced this project?
Well, I've worked with and for the museum in a variety of capacities, and when I told them I would clean this whole site up and I had this general premise for this installation project, they just gave me a green light. And they've been generous, helping me get the mulch. They helped me with my budget. They gave me pretty much latitude to develop this as I saw fit, because overall the whole piece, the whole 20,000 feet, has been conceived as an organizational principle of recycling material and creating something fanciful and magical for the community, to make it a place worthy of visiting. To that end, we have a grand opening on the 22nd of September.
About that. We'll speak about the grand opening in a moment, but I'd like to follow up. Ladies and gentlemen, speaking of places that are extremely important to visit, Paul Lindhard has installed many fixtures throughout the city of Ventura. He has ramparts on top of Grant Park. He has the Welcome to Ventura, beautiful big calcite stone monument at the north end of the west entrance to the city. Many other installations all over the county, all over the state. This man is a recognized sculptor and artist worldwide, actually, but he's very humble and very gracious with his time. And I just wanted to throw that in. I hope
Well,
you don't mind.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it. The tin teepees were the original premise. It's a standalone sculpture I could put anywhere, and its odd configuration would create a presence. You could put it out in the desert, you could put it in a variety of locations. This was the one I wanted because it's going to be in full view of the new inhabitants who are replacing the building this came from. The bricks that I've configured stupas and sort of finials from Eastern culture are additionally from that complex. And when I harvested them, it was there was quite a variety of possibilities, but I came up with a conical form because I started with a conical form. And then the other organizing principle are the square forms of footings of old habitat that are done in a traditional masoned up way, and then we turn them into planter beds to backdrop of sunflower planting. There was the primary view plane of this site involved this huge wall. So we painted the wall and planted sunflowers against it as a backdrop for the initial look. Then we built 3 different masons, built traditional stone masoned arrangements of old habitat using mostly round rocks that came from this site. And then we had to generate some corners and steps and coins to hold the thing together. And we mixed up some various principles of adobe and sand slurry that gave us a kind of organic mortar to bind these footings together, and we're in the first year of planting food in these gardens. The very first planting we donated to the squirrels, who were the primary inhabitants of the site. Now we've worked out a truce and we're growing them food in other ways. This is an artichoke, and it should stand proud and flower just in time to frame this wall and the sunflowers that we've planted.
Talk about a mural?
A mural has been proposed to the museum. It's not my wall to paint. It was my wall to do a shadow play on, and I painted it for cleanness. But if a mural is proposed and the museum sees fit, then a mural will happen on this wall. This configuration of tin teepees inspired me to make these mud cones to grow a type of squash that was an indigenous squash to the area that we live in. These cones were put together with indigenous adobe dirt and some sand, and they hold the moisture in, and they have given us fabulous bunch of squashes of an unknown but old origin. So I was proud of how they mimic the teepee configuration, and in the greater distance are teepees for beans that are growing. So the conical theme of teepees and that type of architecture is from the most primitive thing of ways to grow food to the more, like the bricks, a more decorative thing, the way you would decorate a city or a town. And this is a rondo used, repurposed to create the tin teepees, the bean teepees. These beans will go all the way to the top and start hanging down and over onto the fence. This will be a vital element of greening up this space and making it feel more comfortable for people. These planters, we originally designed them to grow in the Three Sisters technique of corn, beans, and squash. But as I said, the first planting was, we gave it to the squirrels. They didn't actually give us a choice. So we replanted, and these food planters, I think next year we'll have a really bountiful harvest of food because they need to mature dirt. This was really fine quality dirt from Agrimin, and it needs to have growth in it and develop some texture and weight. and so we didn't get that initially, but consistent with this whole project, we have a very distinct plan to develop composting, creating better dirt. All of the vegetation that comes out of this organizational arrangement of planting will fold into a composting arrangement, so we'll be making good dirt for the future garden in the property. And then the dirt underneath the first layer here is actually pretty nice dirt. We've dug recently 3 giant holes to plant specimen oak trees, which is a project that will complete my install on the site. So it'll be the only permanent part of the installation will be the 3 oak trees, and they're fabulous, beautiful trees coming from Ocean Nursery in Ojai. And then as a final surprise, we're putting 5 large-scale public art pieces on this site as the final installation nuance to an art site, so that it kind of says museum in addition to an art installation, which happens to be taking place on the museum grounds. This site, we have compaction sand, we have high quality dirt from Agraman, and we have the original dirt pile, which is fraught with archaeology from the site directly across the street. This material was deposited here by the previous developer over there and just left across the middle of this lot. And it was 80,000 pounds of rock and dirt. There's some interesting stuff in it, no doubt, but all we did was move it to one spot and set up tables, sorting tables, and sifting tables so that future archaeology students will be able to come out here and work through the programs being developed by the museum. So it's all ready to go, and those programs are kind of being developed. It's kind of a good-to-go arrangement. There's well over 80,000 pounds of archaeology here. Mission orchard wall parts and old town history that was across the street. And then last but not least, we've built a composting arrangement to be able to work healthily with all the garden and greenery that we're going to develop. And so this 3-bin system should enable us to have good dirt, folded in compost from a local organic restaurant, and our own green waste from this site. So it'll be creating healthy dirt all the way around, and it's lashed up the way it is to be rodent proof. Generally, I think it's the best compost arrangement I've ever had, and I'm looking forward to making dirt from it. These 3 large holes are preparation for specimen oak trees that I'm donating to this site in a memorial piece for my wife, who I lost last year. And it's my hope to leave them as a legacy for the community. They're remarkable, healthy trees already. They'll be able to get as large as these sycamore trees over in the distance. And the trees I chose, I'm really, really excited about bringing in here. It'll be about a week from now. The entire site will be complete before the grand opening that we're going to have on the 22nd of September. Daniel Ocean, he was extremely generous and helpful in helping me locate best quality specimens. These are going to be coastal oaks that will do lots better down here in our climate than say an encino, which is the commonest oak in Southern California. Nobody had to supervise the dig. We did a dig alert to be sure there were no pipes in the holes and no existing plumbing. After that, we were given permission to dig these holes in spatial relationship to the canopy the trees are going to generate in the future. I have been asked about Chumash archaeological aspects of this particular site. To the best of my knowledge, this was not a habitat. This was in the middle of the orchard for the original Mission orchard. And there's no evidence that there was habitat on this specific site. And nothing was found from the dig. The dirt is all right here to be examined and broken up and mixed with other dirt to backfill for the trees. And then we'll add it to the dirt pile over here. But it was very evident that this is just native soil, and it has nothing more interesting than a little bit of old clay pipe. We just put the trees in today, and the assessment of our soil was that it's really a very clayey soil, and it's not going to provide healthy drainage for the trees if it's just really wet. So we're going to dig a French drain sump between the 3 trees before we unbox the trees and backfill them. This was built as a symbolic fire pit, and it turns out you can't have a fire in the city of Ventura. So we ran rope lights through it, and we're going to put a sculpture of a giant flame coming out of the top. So this will be a symbolic fire, and all the pieces in this garden are symbolic presences to hearken your imagination to what organizational principles this garden is built around. This acorn sculpture has already been shown in the front of the museum. This was a design of mine and a sculpture by Kevin Carmen, a fellow artist at my yard. We do a lot of collaborative work together, and I'm real pleased with this. We had it up in the Taft Gardens for the last 6 months. Now it's going to be here for another 6 months, and it's kind of beautiful symbolism that it came here when our coastal oaks were delivered and installed in their holes today. I think it's a great symbolic presence to round out the overall perspective of what it is this garden is for. All right, well, this garden plot arrangement here was designed to grow food, and the first batch of food that we grew we fed to the squirrels, who were the primary inhabitants of this property. Then we started growing food for the squirrels, and they left our food alone. But we're still working our way into gardening skills to generate a community garden. Part of the problem with the community garden is access. And so we're working on new gates and principles for that access that will facilitate making this a space where people from the Wave or new tenants in the building across the street will take an interest in gardening and help produce food here. That should take care of all the food, really. It's not that big of a gardening situation. Well, our sunflower project has finally taken off. The first 2 crops were eaten by the squirrels, and these got a head start enough to be ripe and ready for our grand opening on the 22nd of September. They'll probably grow another foot or 2 by then. So you'll have a fabulous vista against this wall. And the whole idea was this wall was our backdrop for that. So I think it's working out well. Well, I'm standing where the band will be playing on Wednesday evening for the grand opening of this park. And we'll have video projection on the wall. It was a beautiful 6 months of getting this space organized into something that we can be proud of.
Well, Paul Lindhard, this has been a fabulous, fabulous visit to your sensational art installation, and you have a grand opening coming up this coming month on September 22nd. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Tell us all about it.
Well, the grand opening will have live music. The museum will be providing beverages, and we'll probably do a little speechifying like we're doing now to dedicate the project to both my wife and to the museum and to the community at large. The food growing aspect of this is to create a community garden for people who live proximate enough to want to participate.
So do you have a media day the day before or in the morning? And what hours are the event? What hours?
The hours are going to be from 4:30 on that Wednesday. We'll probably be here on site preparing in the morning, and then once we know we're ready, take that short break and get together whatever else we need to.
What is your website, and do you have any online podcasts or that sort of thing?
My website is Art City at artcitystudios.com, and we are currently doing an Art City podcast on Spotify that will be airing consistently for the next unknown period of time into the future.
What's the name of that podcast?
It's the Art City Podcast.
Simple enough, on Spotify. Ladies and gentlemen, we are visiting with Paul Lindhard, the visionary of this installation, Echoes from the Past, and the curator of and creator of Art City Stone Studios over on Dubbers Lane. Paul, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Rob. Thank you.
And thank you at home for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you again on another episode of Gardens of Ventura County. I'm your host, Robert Barrett. Thank you for joining us, and have a good evening. Good night.